What if Anakin and Obi-Wan were still fighting when Sidious arrived on Mustafar? That's our story, hope you guys enjoy, and let's get right into this one. Our story begins on Mustafar, as Obi-Wan Kenobi is dueling Anakin Skywalker, now Darth Vader, along the lava rivers. The two of them were barely balancing on a floating platform, swinging at each other, trying to stay above the lava, and as Obi-Wan broke off on one of the swings, he looked up to the black clouds, as it seemed like something was emerging through them in the distance. From here, it was hard to tell exactly what he saw. If it was a ship, he had to hope it was Yoda, and the two of them just kept on fighting until Obi-Wan saw an opportunity to try and end this. He flipped backwards onto the higher part of a sloped lava bank, yelling down to Anakin that it's over, and he has the high ground. Anakin was staring up at his former master with rage. He was about to tell Kenobi that he is foolish to underestimate him, but from the near corner, someone else was now arriving. It was Emperor Palpatine with a group of clones. Palpatine took in the battle in front of him, deciding to finish this himself. Obi-Wan didn't know who to look at between Anakin and Palpatine, and this hesitation would cost him. Sidious picked him up with the Force, throwing him down into the hot, rocky slope. Obi-Wan tumbled down the burning coals, coming to a stop just meters in front of the lava river. Palpatine made his way onto the coals, yelling down at Anakin to get out of here. He has done well, and now he must go to Padme, make sure that she is alright. Palpatine knew that Anakin was at his most desperate, his most angry, and it made him unbalanced and arrogant. He was in no state to finish this fight. So, Palpatine played the role of a kind master once more, pretending to care about Padme's life. Anakin would leap over Obi-Wan, who was struggling back to his feet, robe starting to catch fire, and Anakin just took off past Palpatine and towards the landing pad. When he was gone, Obi-Wan pulled out his lightsaber again, but Sidious blasted lightning right into the saber, and it flicked backwards into the lava. So Obi-Wan reached out, catching the lightning now, redirecting it away, but his feet were sliding further down towards the flowing lava. His boots were slowly burning away, and Obi-Wan was dropped to his knees, still holding back the lightning, using every ounce of strength that he had left. But he was exhausted. He'd been drained physically and mentally from this fight with Anakin. Everything he's ever loved and fought for has been ripped away by his best friend, the boy that he trained. All of these emotions and thoughts built up into one, and Obi-Wan screamed out with pure adrenaline, creating an explosion of lightning that was flowing between him and Sidious. Sidious was thrown backwards as he was hit by it. The clone troopers were hit by the lightning, killed instantly, and as Sidious slowly got back to his feet, he looked down and saw Obi-Wan now floating away on a moving platform in the lava. And the Jedi was not moving as he was on this platform, as he seemingly used the last burst of his power to try and end this. Sidious knew Kenobi may still be alive, but he would not last long out here. So, Sidious slowly turned, preparing to go and find Skywalker. But out on the lava river, Obi-Wan was lying on his back, feet and hands burned, to the point where he could barely feel them. His robes were being burned away still, but he was alive, and the shield keeping the platform above the lava was keeping him safe as he closed his eyes, floating forever away. Back up on the landing platform, Anakin carried Padme inside of her ship, and she slowly stirred back awake. She remembered everything, and her eyes would open in horror as she saw Anakin, because she knew what this meant. She asked him where Obi-Wan was. Did he kill him? Anakin just told Padme to try and relax. She hit her head when she fell. This made Padme angry, and she sat up to push Anakin away, saying that she didn't fall. He dropped her. Anakin stepped away, telling Padme to stay here. He's doing all of this for her. Why can't she see that? Padme saw something in Anakin that she didn't recognize. He's gone mad. And Anakin, through small laughs like he was being truly battling with himself, trying to forget everything he's done, told Padme he will prove it to her. He will show his loyalty to her. He will go and kill Palpatine right now. This wasn't the worst thing for Padme to hear. If Anakin wants to go and kill the Emperor, that would be excellent. So, as Darth Sidious stepped back up to the landing pad, he would find Anakin exiting the ship, igniting his lightsaber, yelling with a wicked smile on his face that he doesn't need him anymore. He can feel the dark power inside of him. He will be the one to save Padme, alone. Sidious just shook his head, calling Anakin a foolish boy, and igniting his red saber. Anakin screamed and flew into the air, dragging his blade across the steel floor, throwing sparks into Sidious's face, and as he went up, Sidious leaned back just enough, readying himself to block Anakin's attacks. As Anakin slammed his blade down hard, Sidious blocked it one-handed and twisted, before he kicked him hard in the ribs. Anakin stumbled to a knee, then turned to deflect against a series of quick thrusts from Sidious. Anakin moved back in, and the two Sith were evenly matched. Anakin continued forward, swinging with more power, using his darkness as Dooku once told him to. For a moment, Anakin had him, but Anakin lifted his saber for a final blow, and Sidious released a burst of power from his free hand, sending Anakin flailing backwards over the edge of the landing pad, back down to the hot sand below. Anakin pushed forward to his feet, but Sidious had the high ground, pushing Skywalker back down, then reaching out, lifting him high into the air, hurling Anakin across the landing pad with a blast so violent that his body bounced off of a wing of the Imperial shuttle. Anakin tried to rise, but he could barely move. His back was nearly broken, and Sidious was now lifting him by the throat with the Force, slamming him into the ground, then dragging him across the steel floor like a doll. Sidious let him drop, raised both hands, and unleashed a torrent of lightning that coursed through Anakin. The final blast lifted Anakin off the ground, launching him hard right into Padme's ship. Anakin slowly peeled off of the ship wing, landing in a broken pile hard on the steel floor. Sidious was almost proud of Anakin for following the way of the Sith and trying to take out his master, but he simply wasn't close to ready for this fight. He was exhausted from his fight with Obi-Wan. He was trying to compartmentalize the horrors that he caused in the temple. Anakin was a shell of himself, and the power of the Chosen One couldn't save him in that moment. No matter, Anakin would still have other uses, Sidious decided, and he would be loaded onto Padme's ship. Padme was calling out for Anakin to ask what has happened, but it was instead the grotesque figure of Palpatine who stalked into the back of the ship, telling Padme everything will be fine. He put a hand to her head, using the Force to knock her unconscious as well, and the ship rose up. Padme would be brought back to Coruscant, where she would be locked up deep in the executive building, but Palpatine would bring Anakin somewhere else. He would be placed in an emerging base on the planet Wayland. Anakin was put into a Bacta tank, and cloning experiments would quickly get underway. Sidious wanted to clone Anakin, create a version of him that would never truly betray him. Padme would soon give birth with the aid of medical droids in a prison area, and she would be kept alive in order to help raise the children until they were ready to be trained as darkside users. There would come a day when one of them would be worthy to be the true Sith apprentice, but for now, Sidious would work to clone Anakin and be patient with the twins. So, as Anakin was kept in a stasis as experiments to clone him were underway, and Padme was stuck in a deep prison area with the twins, Sidious truly got to work on establishing the Empire. Things were looking quite perfect for the Sith Lord. And out on Mustafar, Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi was still alive. In fact, he was found floating along the lava river by a group of insectoid creatures that Obi-Wan could just refer to as Mustafarians. And the creatures had taken Obi-Wan into their home, deep inside of a cool cave system, and they began using their own resources to heal Obi-Wan. The Jedi Master didn't understand why these creatures were helping him, and they certainly didn't speak the same language, but the creatures would begin drawing pictures along the cave walls to help Obi-Wan understand. And over time, Obi-Wan began to see the reason. These creatures knew Palpatine as some sort of enemy to their world. The industrial projects that he created with his base took away a home of the Mustafarians. The creatures here hated Palpatine, and they saw Obi-Wan try to fight this bad man. And although Obi-Wan lost, it was in their tradition to honor anyone who tries to fight an enemy by bringing them back to full health. So, Obi-Wan was in the caves, undergoing healing projects on his burned limbs and body, and he would be here for months. The healing process was not quick with the injuries he has sustained, and so, Kenobi truly began assimilating into the lives of these Mustafarians. Food and water came from plant life deep in the caves, and Obi-Wan quickly found himself growing close to the creatures here who brought him back to life. To the Mustafarians, Obi-Wan was so interesting. They watched from a distance as he fought the long-haired evil man, and then they saw him fight the evil man called Palpatine. Obi-Wan was a true warrior, and they enjoyed having him here. They hoped to eventually find Obi-Wan a ship to get out of here on, but Mustafar didn't exactly have many visitors. After these few months, though, something had to change. On Coruscant, Grandmaster Yoda was still here. He never went into exile, as the disappearance of both Obi-Wan and Padme made him quite troubled. He thought Obi-Wan may be dead, but he knew Padme may very well be alive. If Sidious wanted the child of Skywalker, he would keep Padme alive to raise the children until they were old enough to be trained. So, for these last few months, Yoda and Bail Organa had worked to try and find the truth. And finally, from a spy within Palpatine's ranks, they found that Padme was being kept in the lower levels of this building. Yoda got to work one night, infiltrating the vents of the executive building, following the path laid out by the spy. It was a clone trooper called Oppo who turned on Palpatine after Anakin's disappearance, and as his chip wore down. Yoda finally infiltrated the prison area, cutting down Death Trooper guards and freeing Padme. As alarms began to go off, Yoda guided her out of the prison. Padme said they need to go back and get the children, but Yoda said there is no time. They will go back another time. For now, Yoda and Padme barely escaped, as a dozen LAAT gunships were arriving. The two of them escaped into the Coruscant streets where they could hide. Yoda had grown weaker, and he knew he couldn't do this alone anymore. The rest of the Jedi in the galaxy were scattered and scared. But as he spoke with Padme, she told Yoda that she thinks Kenobi is still alive. Yoda wasn't sure he believed it, but Padme said that Anakin didn't kill him. She could tell the way he spoke to her. Yoda knew that the Jedi, the budding rebellion, it needed some hope. And Yoda knew that Obi-Wan could be the best hope that they have. So, Yoda decided he would go to Dagobah with Padme. There, Yoda would find somewhere extremely strong in the Force, and he would close his eyes, getting into the right state of mind for what he needs. Out on Mustafar, Obi-Wan Kenobi was drinking from a melon, putting some fresh bandages on his hands that were finally beginning to truly heal, when he felt something in the Force, a familiar presence. Obi-Wan walked out of the Mustafar cave, turning a corner to find Yoda standing peacefully. Yoda looked younger, like his form from before the war. Obi-Wan didn't understand. Yoda was quite happy to see Obi-Wan, and Padme was right. Obi-Wan would admit to Yoda that he's ended up staying here more out of fear than anything else. He thought all hope was lost. He was hiding from the confrontation of his failures. But Yoda said he will soon be needed again, and he would tell Kenobi that when he is fully healed, Padme will be waiting with a rebellion for him to join. Obi-Wan would thank Yoda for coming to find him. It was a spark that he needed. But then, Yoda faded away, and out on Dagobah, he told Padme to continue her work as he faded away here as well. Yoda had used his final strength to use force projection, placing himself on Mustafar. It was no easy task, and Yoda would now pass on into the Netherworld, where Qui-Gon was waiting. There was some hope returning to the galaxy, and Padme would go back to Coruscant, excited about Kenobi soon returning. But out on Wayland, Emperor Palpatine was observing the results of one of his experiments. It was rather outstanding. He ordered for it to be deployed, and he set up a perfect test. On Coruscant, as Padme Amidala was in the lower levels, continuing to build up a network of clones and spies, something would catch her attention. A new person entered her hidden base. It was Anakin. Padme couldn't believe it. She ran up to Anakin, looking him up and down. He looked pale, lost, almost like he wasn't himself. Padme would usher Anakin into a corner, asking what he was doing here. She thought he was dead. Anakin seemed to gather himself, then smiled softly at Padme, telling her she doesn't understand. He never wanted to storm the temple, kill the Jedi, or fight Kenobi. He was brainwashed by Palpatine, but he's finally broken free and escaped. Padme wanted so badly to believe it was true, and Anakin then said he only wishes that Obi-Wan were here so he could apologize and explain everything. Padme didn't exactly trust Anakin, but she knew that if he was telling the truth, only Obi-Wan would be able to feel it, and perhaps learning that Anakin was brainwashed will help bring Obi-Wan back. So, Padme told Anakin where Obi-Wan was on Mustafar. Anakin thanked her, saying he will go there alone, find him, apologize, and explain everything. Around 5 hours later, Obi-Wan Kenobi was outside of the caves with the Mustafarians, enjoying a final meal before he took off, leaving the planet in a maintenance ship that was recently discovered. He'd really grown to like these creatures, but as he stood up to leave, something arrived on the planet. An Imperial Star Destroyer pierced the black clouds, and Obi-Wan would feel pure fear for the first time in a long time. Without warning, an orbital bombardment got underway from the destroyer. Extremely heavy cannon fire pounded down onto the Mustafarian home, blasting it apart. Obi-Wan panicked. He dove into an area of the cave surrounded by obsidian, and he could only hide in horror as the cannons blasted everything around him. He couldn't hear the dying screams of his friends, as the cannons were too loud, and after 10 minutes of non-stop cannon fire, Obi-Wan looked out of the cave to see a single shuttle floating in the air, scanning the area. And as Obi-Wan looked around to the dozens of fallen Mustafarian bodies torn up from the bombardment, he used his rage, reaching up, grabbing the shuttle with the Force. He easily used his power to crush the engines. The shuttle was slammed down in front of him. Obi-Wan charged forward, ripping the doors off of it, and from inside the shuttle, Anakin Skywalker flew forward, blue saber ignited. Obi-Wan ducked, punching Anakin to the side. He didn't have his lightsaber ever since the duel with Sidious, but he didn't need it. He moved with a fury that he's never touched before, as Anakin barreled toward him with power. Obi-Wan caught Anakin's wrist mid-strike, twisting hard enough to send the blade spinning away. A brutal palm strike drove Anakin backwards, and Obi-Wan kicked him hard into the rock. Obi-Wan called Anakin's saber into his hands, igniting it quickly, pressing the blade to the clone's throat to end this. But as Kenobi stared down, he looked into Anakin's eyes and realized they're not his own. Something was wrong here. His blue eyes were more green. His scar was gone. Obi-Wan realized the truth. This wasn't him. This was a clone. Obi-Wan acted on instinct, missing a killing strike, cutting the clone enough though to make him retreat. The clone of Anakin leapt up into an escape shuttle, taking off from Mustafar, and Obi-Wan knew it was time for him to return to Coruscant. But first, he buried all of the Mustafarian friends, apologizing for what has happened, saying the cruelty of the Empire will be stopped. When he finally found Padme on Coruscant, he quickly told Padme the truth about this version of Anakin. It's not him. It is a clone. But this means that Anakin is alive, and if he is being cloned, then he must have turned back to the light. So Palpatine is using different versions of Anakin. Obi-Wan told Padme to place a tracking device inside of Anakin's ship. He will likely return to wherever he was cloned from in order to heal or be replaced after the failure on Mustafar. Padme would act quickly, placing a tracker inside of this version of Anakin's starship, and when the clone finally found her, he told Padme that he has to go. He's going to look for more surviving Jedi. Padme would hug the clone, telling him she trusts him. The clone thought he was in the clear. He had no reason to think that Obi-Wan was here and telling Padme the truth. So, the Anakin clone would jump to hyperspace, but Padme and Obi-Wan were right behind him. They would track this clone all the way to the planet Wayland, where they saw the giant mountain base. Obi-Wan and Padme landed far away, slipping through the jungle. They would look for a hidden entrance, and they would find it hidden behind layered rock plating. Kenobi slid it open, and they moved into the maintenance tunnels. Padme moved quietly, keeping low, as Obi-Wan disabled a pair of sentry droids with quick strikes, then overrode a locked blast door using a stolen key cylinder. Deeper into the base, they would find the stasis chamber where Anakin was floating suspended in a pale blue fluid, his body locked in a deep stillness. Kenobi smashed the controls, catching Anakin as he collapsed into his arms. He was still alive. As Anakin regained his breath, he felt the presence that filled the entire mountain. He looked up to Kenobi and Padme, telling them Palpatine is here. And indeed he was, studying the clone of Anakin after the encounter on Mustafar. So, as Anakin regained his strength, they made a choice. They need to destroy him and his experiments. So, Anakin and Obi-Wan found lightsabers that were prepared for the clones. Padme snuck deep into the base, looking for the reactor room. Anakin and Obi-Wan raced through the interior of Tantus, cutting through blast doors and security droids as the pull of Palpatine grew heavier with every step. Finally, they would find him in a command chamber, high above a reactor pit, standing before the weakened clone of Anakin. Palpatine slowly turned to them, smiling with glee as he told Kenobi they will both become clones for him now. And the clash would erupt, with Anakin driving forward, Obi-Wan looking for an opening. Sidious countered with vicious bursts of energy that rattled the platforms around them, but this was all only a distraction. Far below, Padme navigated the lower corridors, searching for the reactor area, but instead stumbling upon a containment cell holding the Zillo Beast in deep sedation. Plans would be altered. She overrode the controls, and the creature was awakened, slamming its way free, thundering towards the reactor area. The beast crashed into the deepest parts of this base, and it began to erupt with a shudder, then a chain of detonations running up through the structure. Debris rained on the command chamber. Platforms broke apart beneath this duel as alarms were screaming out. Anakin knew what had to be done. He used the shockwave and explosion to hurl himself into Palpatine, and he held onto him as he dove over a collapsing bridge towards the fiery explosions below, dragging the Sith Lord with him into the fire. Obi-Wan reached out for him, but the bridge gave way, forcing him back just as Padme burst back into the chamber. With no time left, they ran towards Palpatine's shuttle, launching from the burning hangar, as the Zillo Beast's victorious roar echoed through the collapsing mountain. Upon returning, with Sidious dead, Padme and Obi-Wan would infiltrate the executive building and free the twins from their captivity. Luke and Leia were alive and freed. With Sidious dead, the Empire fractured quickly. Moff scrambled to seize control of their sectors. The backbone once held together by Palpatine's singular will would splinter apart. Padme stepped into the chaos as survival became a symbol for her and for the emerging Republic. Obi-Wan stood beside her, a stabilizing force who helped dismantle Imperial strongholds, guide populations through the shift in a post-Empire world. He channeled his despair into rebuilding refugee networks, restoring communication routes, helping planets reclaim their autonomy. Together, Padme and Obi-Wan would forge the foundation of a new government, and their efforts would not erase the scars of war or of the Empire, but they would create a future where those scars no longer dictated the course of the galaxy, and where hope would finally have room to grow once more. And folks, that is our story for today. Just a heads up, videos might be a little bit more scarce this week as it's Thanksgiving over here in America. So, going home, flying home to celebrate that with the family. But yeah, this one wanted to get out. I actually enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was a fun idea to really explore, so hope you guys enjoyed this one. Let me know what you thought down in the comments. Yeah, not a ton to say. I thought it was, a lot of fun. Mustafarians, never included them before. So, yeah, appreciate you guys. As always, happy holidays if you're celebrating. And yeah, I guess that's it for me. Let me know what you want to see next, and I'll see you in the next video.